everyone, today we're going to be learning how to add fractions with unlike denominators. So for a quick recap, a fraction is a value that represents parts of a whole. And the anatomy of a fraction is that the top number is the numerator and the bottom number is the denominator. The numerator shows how many parts you have. The denominator is how many equal parts the whole is divided into. Now, there are some steps you can follow to solve for fractions that have unlike denominators. How would you add those together? So the first step would be to find a common denominator. And to do this, I like to use the list method. The second step is to make sure the numerators follow suit and change. They must be equivalent. And I show this more as we do a few examples. The third step is you're going to add the fractions. So when you follow the first two steps, you're going to have a new fraction and you're going to add those two new fractions. So you're just really changing them to be common, have common denominators, and you'll get a new fraction and you'll add accordingly. The fourth step would be to simplify if necessary. So going on to our first example, I have 2 over 4 plus 6 over 7. They have unlike denominators. Now my first step will be to find a common denominator. And to do this, I'm going to write out a list. So I have a list of 4s and I have a list of 7s. These are all multiples. So I see that both 4 and 7 stop at 28 because that's the common number they share, the common denominator. So since this is my new common denominator, I know for my new fraction, I'm going to add that at the bottom. Now, my second step is to make sure that the numerators match. And to make sure they match, I am simply going to look at my list and see how many times it took me to get to that common multiple, the common denominator. So starting off with 2 over 4, the list I made for 4 is that it took 7 times for me to get to 28. Now I'm going to do that at the top. I'm actually going to do 2 times 7, which is like 4 times 7, to make this fraction match. So if you really want to write it out, you can do 2 over 4 times 7 to the numerator and to the bottom. And now for 6 over 7, I see that it took me 4 times to get to 28. So now I'm going to do that at the top as well for 6. So I'm going to do 6 times 4. And that's essentially how I'm going to make those numerators match with the common denominator, 28. So when I do this, I get 2 times 7, and I get 6 times 4. And I get 14 and 24. And now I'm going to add these together, and I get 38. And for my common denominator, of course, I put 28. So 14 plus 24, that equals 38. And for my common denominator, and as you can see, it could also be 4 times 7 as the fractions give you, I get 28. Now I'm going to simplify. And to do this, I'm going to actually use their greatest common factor, which would be 2. 2 is like your golden number when you're simplifying. It's essentially halving everything. And since 38 and 28 are even numbers, which means that could be simplified without making them a decimal, I'm actually going to divide these by 2. So I'm going to do 38 divided by 2, and I'm going to do 28 divided by 2. And when I do this, I get 19 over 14. Now I can look at my fraction and simplify it even further. Of course, the 19 over 14 is an improper fraction, but if you want to simplify further, you can. So I have 19 over 14. I know 14 could go into 19 once, and I would actually have 5 left over. So I'm going to drop my denominator down, which is 14, and I'm going to put 5 up top because that's my remainder. So that leaves me with this mixed fraction, 1 whole, and 5 over 14. So that is my simplified fraction. Going on to my second example, I have 6 over 2 plus 3 over 5. My first step is to find a common denominator. So I'm going to write out a list. I'm going to write a list of multiples of 2, and I'm going to write a list of multiples of 5. I see that they both stop at 10. That's the common denominator. That's the minimal number I'm going to go to for them to have a common denominator. So I see that's 10, so that means for my new fraction, 10 is going to be my new denominator. Now, what you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. So for my first fraction, 6 over 2, I see that it took me 5 times to get to 10. So now I'm going to do 6 times 5. For 3 over 5, it took 5 2 times to get to 10. So I'm going to do 3 times 2. That's going to make sure that the fractions align. The numerator aligns with the denominator. So when I do this, I get 6 times 5 equals 30, and 3 times 2 equals 6. So I'm going to add those numerators together, 36, and I know that the common denominator is 10. Now, I can simplify this, and I'm going to start off with using my greatest common factor, which is 2, because these are even numbers. So when I do this, I get 36 divided by 2, 10 divided by 2, and when you do that, you get 18 over 5. Now I can simplify this further, and I'm going to see how many times 5 can go into that numerator. How many times can your denominator go into that numerator? 5 can go into 18 3 times, which is 15, and I know that I'm trying to get to 18, so I have 3 as my remainder, and of course I'm going to drop that denominator down as well. And that is my further simplified fraction, a mixed fraction. Now going on to my third example, I have 1 over 2 plus 9 over 14. Now my first step, once again, is find a common denominator. So I'm going to write out my list. I have my multiples of 2, and I have my multiple of 14. I see that they both stop at 14. That is my minimum, and I'm going to use this for my new fraction. So that's the new common denominator. Now what you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. So I see that it took 2 7 times to get to 14, and I see that it took 14 1 time. So I'm going to do 1 times 7, and I'm going to do 9 times 1 to make sure that my numerator aligns with my denominators. Now before I go any further, you can actually see how if you did multiply the denominators together, you would have actually got 28. And that is not, it is a multiple that they both share, but it's not the minimal, that's not the minimal denominator that they share, the minimal multiple that they can possibly share. So that's why I prefer the list method, because when I was in elementary and a little bit of middle school, I would sometimes get tripped up because sometimes you can multiply the denominators and you will find your common multiple that way. Word vomit. But when you write out the list, you are more apt to see that first multiple that they both share instead of the maximum multiple that they share. So either way you do it, you can get a result quicker or faster, but just be mindful that sometimes multiplying the denominators can essentially mess up the equation. It's okay either way, but the list is a little bit more factual. And the second step is to make sure that the numerators match. So I'm going to do my 1 times 7, that equals 7, and I'm going to do my 9 times 1, that equals 9. I'm actually going to add those together. And when I do that, I get 16, and I'm going to use my common denominator, 14. Now I have this, I know that these are both even numbers, and I'm going to use my greatest common factor, and I'm going to divide these by 2. This is how I'm simplifying. And once I do that, I get 8 over 7. Now I'm going to ask, how many times can 7 go into 8? 7 can go into 8 once, and I will be left over with 1 more. And I'm going to drop that denominator down, which is 1 whole and then 1 over 7. So I hope this video helped you guys learn how to add fractions with unlike denominators. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can leave them down below in the comment section. And until next time, this is Ari the Math Tutor signing out. Bye!